Well, good evening again and welcome. This virtual public hearing is being held by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control's Office of Ocean and Coastal Resource Management, hereafter referred to as DHEC OCRM. The purpose of this hearing is to accept comments on the critical area permit application submitted by the Seabrook Island Property Owners Association. Please be aware this public hearing is being recorded. My name is Tara Maddock, and I'm a member of DHEC's Community Engagement Team, and I will be serving as your meeting host for tonight's virtual hearing. It's a pleasure to be with you. We also have a few other DHEC staff with us, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves now.
Good evening, this is Christy Illenberg.
Good evening, everyone. This is Catherine Yan.
And this is Matt Slagle with DHEC OCRM.
Thank you all. Your participation is important to us, so we have gone to extensive efforts to ensure that anyone who is interested in engaging with us has the ability to do so. We are continuing to evaluate these tools and accommodations, and we certainly welcome your input on how we may be able to improve your experience with virtual participation. We do encourage you to close other applications running on your computer and turning off other streaming services or devices at your location for the duration of the virtual hearing. If you are having trouble joining the meeting using Microsoft Teams on your computer or mobile device, we encourage you to join by phone. Again, the call-in number is 864-558-7311. And the access code is 238-681-155#. Those numbers are also included in the email that was sent yesterday afternoon to all who registered for the public hearing. If you accidentally exit the meeting, you can rejoin. Tonight's agenda will begin with a brief overview of our virtual meeting logistics. Then Matt Slagle with DHEC OCRM will discuss the department's role in reviewing the critical area permit application as submitted. Patrick Barano with Coastal Science and Engineering will provide additional technical details about the proposed project. Finally, we will hold the public hearing during which you will have the opportunity to provide comments for the department's consideration as it reviews the permit application. We will be doing a few things virtually to help prevent distractions and ensure that everyone is heard at the appropriate time. Please respect that all cameras have been turned off and all lines have been muted to minimize background noise and echoing. After the presentation, we will unlock the lines and share further instructions so that all who would like to provide comments this evening are able to do so. Your role here this evening is an important one. Your comments may provide DHEC staff with additional things to consider when making a final decision regarding the critical area permit application. A final decision has not yet been made and will not be made here this evening. The purpose of this hearing is for you to provide comments before a final decision is made. DHEC OCRM welcomes and encourages comments made this evening, as well as those submitted in writing through the end of the public comment period, which is Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. Following the presentations, I will begin the public comment portion by calling on those of you who indicated during pre-registration that you would like to make a comment. If you have decided that you no longer wish to comment when you are called on, you may decline at that time. Once we have finished hearing from all pre-registered speakers, I will provide instructions on how to make a comment if you did not pre-register to do so. After all comments have been heard, I will make closing remarks and this public hearing will be adjourned. I will now call on Matt Slagle to provide more information about DHEC OCRM's role in reviewing this critical area permit application.
Good evening. My name is Matt Slagle, and I am the manager of DHEC OCRM's Beachfront Management section. I am also the staff person that is reviewing this permit application. DHEC's Office of Ocean and Coastal Resource Management's general charge is to protect the quality of the coastal environment and to promote economic and social improvement of the coastal zone. This mandate includes the wise management of coastal resources through the review of projects that propose impacts to those resources, including coastal waters, tidelands, beaches, and the beach dune system. Decision-making relies upon the Coastal Tidelands and Wetlands Act, which includes the Beachfront Management Act, the department's critical area permitting regulations, and coastal zone consistency certification review. The critical area permitting responsibility of DHEC OCRM is the basis for this public hearing tonight, and our review is initiated upon receipt of a critical area permit application, which was placed on public notice on September 13th, 2022. I will now display some slides depicting the plans for the project. These are plans you should all be familiar with as they were included in the public notice. As advertised in the public notice, the proposed project involves the harvest or excavation of sand from the intertidal beach along an accretional portion of Seabrook Island's beach between central Seabrook Island and Captain Sam's Inlet, shown here as Area A, with placement of the harvested sand along the eroded area near the beach club, shown as Area B. Up to 25 acres of exposed intertidal beach would be utilized to harvest up to a cumulative total of 300,000 cubic yards of sand in 3 discrete events over the course of the 5-year permit. All work would be performed by land-based equipment working between low water and high water along the intertidal beach. The purpose of the project, as stated by the applicant, is to restore a dry sand beach along an exposed rock revetment to mitigate erosion and restore habitat. The orange shaded area, labeled 1, is the proposed excavation area. The green shaded area, labeled 2, is the proposed placement area. The dashed lines, labeled 3 and 4, are proposed high and low haul paths on the beach, respectively, where trucks would transport sand from the excavation area to the placement area. The area labeled 5 is the proposed staging area for equipment. This figure is a zoomed-in view of the proposed excavation area where sand would be harvested. The light blue dashed line shows the mean lower low water contour, and the orange dashed line shows the mean higher high water contour. This figure is a zoomed-in view of the proposed berm fill area where excavated sand would be placed. Again, the light blue dashed line shows the mean lower low water contour, and the orange dashed line shows the mean higher high water contour. Finally, this figure shows a typical cross-section in the area of the beach where sand would be excavated. That's the top part of the figure. And the bottom part of the figure shows a typical cross-section where the sand would be placed. On each figure, the horizontal dashed purple line represents the mean lower low water contour, and the dashed green line represents the mean higher high water contour. In preparing for tonight, we heard that the community was interested in obtaining more technical information about this project. We invited Patrick Barano with Coastal Science and Engineering, who is the applicant's agent for this project, to provide more of this information. Patrick, please go ahead and take control to share your slides.
Great, thanks a lot, Tara and Matt. Thank you for reviewing this permit and having us here this evening. We really appreciate all of your coordination. I'm going to try to be quick about this and move through our rationale behind the project, as well as a little bit more detail with regards to our specific project plans. So my name is Patrick Barano. I'm a project manager and geologist working for Coastal Science and Engineering, excuse me, on behalf of the Seabrook Island Property Owners Association. My colleague Stephen Trainham couldn't be here tonight. He has a very important date with an elementary school orchestra in town. He sends his apologies. So Seabrook Island is a rather small barrier island compared to some of the other islands in South Carolina. It's about 3 miles long between Captain Sam's Inlet over here on the northeast end and North Edisto River Inlet over here on the southeast end. The long-term sand drift in this location is from northeast to southwest. So sand originates actually up on Kiowa Island and migrates downshore across Captain Sam's Inlet, continues its path to the south and west towards North Edisto River Inlet. Because Seabrook Island is relatively small, like I said, and it's located next to a relatively large inlet in North Edisto River, it's strongly influenced by the adjacent inlets and their associated shoals. Since the 1980s, Coastal Science has partnered with Seabrook Island Property Owners Association to manage the location of Captain Sam's Inlet through a series of relocations. The first of these was in 1983, and the most recent was in 2015. These relocations have been able to add sand to Seabrook Island by keeping the channel of Captain Sam's Inlet relatively stable over time. Because it's an unstabilized inlet, that's something we'll talk about in just a second, it tends to migrate pretty rapidly compared to larger systems like North Edisto River Inlet. This management strategy has resulted in the creation of over 100 acres of dune and beach habitat on Seabrook Island, shown here. You can see the large area of accretion and rather dense thicket type dune and maritime forest vegetation on the right in the image from 2010. Now, the beach width and overall beach volumes on Seabrook Island are not only strongly influenced by the position of Captain Sam's Inlet up here on the northeast, but also by the position and depth of what we call the marginal flood channel of North Edisto River Inlet, shown here with this red arrow. Now, between Rankin Point, which is at the apex of this red arrow, and the beach club located here near the southwestern corner of the shoreline of Seabrook Island, the position of that inlet will either eat away at the beach or allow the beach to accrete. If you look at some of these aerial images over the last 15 to 20 years, that channel has gradually deepened and widened. And as a result, there's limited sand supply passing this stone revetment that you can see rather clearly in the more recent images guarding the beach club and a few of the private developments near that corner shoreline around the corner of the island to the North Edisto River Inlet shoreline. One of the most obvious manifestations of this is not only a narrow beach and really absence of any dry beach in the vicinity of the beach club, but rapid channel scour and slope failure events just to the south and west of the beach club. There have been at least 8 of these events since 2015. It's a rather regular occurrence at this point, creates very hazardous swimming conditions wherein the position on the beach that would be mean sea level one day is 30 feet of water the next day. As a result, it effectively closes the beach to any sort of pedestrian access. Unfortunately, this is almost exactly at the location right here of boardwalk number 8, which is across the street from a major parking lot and the beach club complex operated by Seabrook Island. So it's a heavily trafficked area anyways, or it should be at least. Again, this can happen really rapidly. So we're talking about minutes to hours that the beach essentially disappears in what is effectively an underwater landslide. This really limits the ability of the community to monitor the conditions for public safety's sake, and as a result has led to Boardwalk 8 essentially being permanently closed at this point. So the aim of this project is to facilitate more balanced alongshore transport. Whenever you have multiple inlets affecting an island that's relatively small like Seabrook, it's very, very common to see massive accumulations of sand on one portion of the island and 2,000 to 3,000 feet downshore, a real deficit and erosion. So the lack of accretion between Rankin Point, located here, and the beach club, located here, indicates that we have an imbalance in our beach volumes in the alongshore direction at Seabrook Island. And you can see this on this image. The beach width is far greater to the north and east and south and west than it is along the Armorstone revetment. The problem there is that some of these scour events, as you can see in this image from 2018, actually come pretty close to undermining that revetment. So the community is very concerned about the long-term viability of maintaining a beach in this location, as well as the upland structures just behind that revetment. So we considered a few alternatives when trying to solve this problem for the community. We rejected some of these due to costs, such as trucking in upland sand for placement along the beach club. Also, abandoning of the property was rejected by the community on the basis of cost. We also rejected some due to environmental impacts. For instance, if we really wanted to solve this problem, we would probably realign the North Edisto River Inlet marginal flood channel and allow the beach to accrete where it normally would if that channel wasn't deep and wide the way that it is right now. However, that would trigger pretty large environmental impacts in our opinion, so we didn't go for that one. We could have reinforced the quarry stone revetment to prevent undermining. We elected not to do that due to both environmental impacts and cost. We even looked into the option of a more structural solution, like a terminal groin or a groin field to retain sand, and that was also rejected on the basis of environmental impacts and cost. So what we finally landed on was the adopted alternative, which is the scraping of sand, as Matt was describing a few minutes ago, from this orange polygon labeled 1. It's a 25-acre area of intertidal beach, so it's between mean high water and mean low water. 2, this placement area labeled 2 in the sort of greenish blue polygon here on the southwest side of the image. This would effectively cover up most of that exposed armor stone revetment that is really the structural cause of the problem for the community here. So if we look at this in profile, Matt just showed you this graphic, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. We're proposing a 2 to 3 foot cut across 25 acres of intertidal beach. The volume that we selected was 300,000 cubic yards over a 5-year period in no more than 3 discrete events. Now, we selected that volume because if you examine our volume figures from February 20 to April 2022, the reaches of the beach, the sections of the beach that are located within this harvest area are highlighted with this red box. They actually gained about 300,000 cubic yards over a 2-year period. We have surveys going back to the early 80s and some even back into the late 70s at Seabrook Island, and this is fairly common in this section of the island. So we were going with that volume in an effort to make the project more sustainable and less impactful in the short run. We believe that a 2 to 3 foot cut would be filled within a few tidal cycles, given the position of the borrow area on the island. The typical fill sections that we would see would serve to widen and elevate the beach in front of that armor stone revetment, and again, facilitate a longshore sediment transport, around the corner of the island from that Rankin Point area past the beach club to the North Edisto River Inlet shoreline. Immediately following placement, this would result in about 100 to 150 feet of dry beach width, as well as a low storm berm feature on the back shore, the upper beach, that could even serve as the seed for a potential dune restoration project to improve the ecological functionality of the island in the vicinity of the revetment. This fill shown here is based on the assumption of about a 35 cubic yards per linear foot of beach volume, which extrapolated over a 3,000 foot project length, as we have proposed, would be about 100,000 cubic yards times 3 events is 300,000 cubic yards over a 5-year period. We've actually performed this sort of work before at other locations around South Carolina. Less recently at Seabrook Island, actually, 2001 to 2007, almost the exact same project was sponsored by the Seabrook Island Property Owners Association, wherein sand was hauled from past Rankin Point towards Captain Sam's Inlet on a very significantly accreted portion of the island around towards the beach club and a more erosional section of the island. Similar efforts have also been pursued at Isle of Palms, wherein we harvested intertidal shoals that were migrating ashore, very similar to the section of the island that Seabrook is on, but for Isle of Palms, and we deposited that sand on erosive sections of the beach. So we have a bit of experience working with this sort of background and this sort of hardware, and we believe that this is the least impactful alternative. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Patrick, for sharing that additional information on the proposed project. That concludes CSC's presentation. It is the responsibility of the department to accept applications and review them in an unbiased manner, as staff is charged with interpreting state laws and regulations. No decision is made until such time as the file is administratively complete and until all necessary facts have been gathered. In that regard, this hearing is designed to gather comments as to the merits of the project, then consider all information when making a decision based on the Coastal Tidelands and Wetlands Act, department regulations, and policies. As stated above, the impacts to the coastal waters, tidelands, beaches, and beach dune system critical areas are included in the scope of the department's review under this critical area permit application. The specific regulations that will be reviewed for this project will be R3011B and C, which are standards that apply to all projects, R3011D, which are standards that apply to all projects impacting beaches or the beach dune system, R3012G for dredging and filling, R3013N for erosion control, and R3013O for sand dune management. Additionally, staff will base the decision upon applicable policies in the Coastal Zone Management Plan. This application was placed on public notice on September 13th, 2022, and the original public comment period ended on October 14th, 2022. The orange marker on the timeline represents tonight's public hearing and where we are in the process. Following tonight's hearing, you will have an additional 2 weeks until December 20th, 2022 to submit written comments. Please remember that the purpose of this hearing is to allow interested persons to make a statement for the record, which will be reviewed by OCRM staff prior to a decision. For the sake of accuracy, important facts should be submitted in writing. Please submit comments by visiting the link on this slide and then clicking on the public notice and e-permitting link around the middle of the page. You may also submit comments via mail or email through December 20th, 2022 to the address shown on this slide or to my email address shown at the bottom. And for your reference, there are some additional electronic copies of the project description, the project plans, the biological assessment and essential fish habitat assessment, and a review and analysis of alternatives prepared by Coastal Science and Engineering that are available for download, also at the link that is shown on the screen. Once we begin the public comment portion of the hearing, we will invite all persons that registered to speak to make a statement for the record first. Afterwards, we will invite any others to comment, and instructions on how to do so will be provided at that time. The only remarks allowed will be from the person called to speak. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes, and each speaker may only speak one time. We would advise those who plan to speak to limit your comments to the project at hand, which is the proposed excavation, transport, and placement of sand on Seabrook Island's beach. To make certain we gather all presented information, direct questioning during the hearing will not be allowed. Tara, I think we're ready to begin the public comment portion of this evening's hearing.
Thank you, Matt. For everyone to have a fair and equal opportunity to participate tonight and to ensure that we proceed in a timely and effective manner, the following guidelines have been established. First, as Matt mentioned, we welcome your comments and would respectfully ask they be limited to 5 minutes each. At the end of your allotted time, you will hear this sound.
Hold on.
Thanks, Catherine. If you are not able to complete your comments within the allotted time, you may certainly still submit them in writing before the end of the public comment period. We also just want to ask that you're respectful towards those who are making comments. You each have a unique and valued perspective. And thirdly, we ask that you do not interrupt or ask other participants to respond during your comments. As we transition into the comment portion of tonight's public hearing, please remain patient as we alternate between those of you who are joining online and those of you who are joining by phone. We will begin with those who pre-registered to comment. And the first couple of folks that I would like to call on would be first Riley Bradham, and then second, I'll be calling on Lauren Rust. And so Mayor Riley Bradham, I believe you are with us this evening. If you would please unmute your line and state your name first and then begin your comments, please.
Hang on, Tara. I need to unlock the lines.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
I think it may have moved places since the last time we did this.
Sure.
Apologies. Alrighty,
And
there
while
we go. Mayor Bradham should be able to unmute now.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Well, I had two questions. The first one you've already answered, which is where the the sand was coming from, and it sounds like it's coming from north on the beach. The other question I had is very simple, and that's how long do you believe the sand that you place on the corner of the beach will stay there? Hello?
So as a reminder, this is a public hearing. I think the purpose is to make sure that we are collecting comments from everyone. So we may be able to address that question at another time, but we want to make sure we're kind of getting your comments officially in the record.
Christy, Catherine, this is Tara. Can you hear me?
We
Yes,
have you,
Tara.
Tara.
Thank you for stepping in. And again, Mayor Bradham, I was able to hear that. We do ask you to submit those comments to Matt for the record. And I believe he made himself available for any discussion of that after the public hearing. And secondly, I would like to call on Lauren Rust. If you would please unmute your line and state your name.
Hi, this is Lauren Rust. I'm going to decline a comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for letting us know. And we also have Glenda Miller. You are also pre-registered to speak. And if you would like to make a comment at this time, we welcome you to unmute yourself and state your name, please.
Yes, this is Glenda Miller, and I've decided to submit written comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda, very much for letting us know. And if you'll just give me just 1 minute, let's see.
Tara, do you need me to read the next name?
Actually, Tara, I believe we may have Dana Beach or Virginia Beach joining us by phone. I'm trying to look at the phone numbers compared to the registration, and they had
Thank you,
also
Kristen.
pre-registered to speak. So if you, Mr. and Mrs. Beach, if y'all are available and the phone number ending in 4948, you can unmute by using *6 on your phone. We would welcome your comments. Hello?
Hello, this is Dana Beach.
Hey, Dana Beach.
Can you
We
hear me?
would. Yes, sir. We've got you.
Great. Thank you very much for holding this and letting me and all of us have an opportunity to comment. A couple of thoughts. First, the habitat impact on the on especially shorebirds, but also at the whole range of coastal benthic and organisms up the food chain will be obviously substantially negatively impacted in the area where the digging will happen, the 25 acres. And I guess I don't know how to put it in a question or a comment, but it's pretty clear that habitat will not be replaced in front of the beach club by restoring that section of beach, and even especially in light of the additional disturbance that will occur as a result of more utilization of what would be an expanded beach there. So I guess my comment is that this seems very clearly to me to be a net negative in terms of impact to coastal the coastal ecosystem. And the one thing I guess I'd raise on that point is that we really don't even have adequate data to know how to quantify and identify those impacts. And there's, we've got inadequate, hold on one second. We've got inadequate funding to do the monitoring of this system as it is, and to have another variable thrown in means that I think it'll be even more difficult to determine what actually is going on. And I would say the system itself, if we define it as the Captain Sam's Seabrook Beach, the bars off of Seabrook and DeVoe Bank, I think we all understand that's one integrated habitat, and the animals that use it, especially birds, go between those different land masses and probably down to botany as well. So what I would say is, one, it seems clear there's a net negative impact to that within that system, and two, we need to know a heck of a lot more about utilization and populations over time, if we're going to evaluate it and try to mitigate what might happen if the permit is granted. So I guess what I'm saying is, one, you got to acknowledge the negative impact, and two, we need to quantify and be ready to mitigate when we see a downturn in these various populations. And I'd use the example of bird keystono, which I know many of y'all are old enough to remember. When the Corps of Engineers dredged the Folly River, they destroyed that rookery, completely destroyed it. And fortunately, when the second renourishment of the beach came along, there was enough wisdom on behalf of the agencies and PRT and others to establish a long-term monitoring and renourishment program. And there were decision points along the way that allowed the agencies to respond in the event that things weren't going right. So my suggestion, I'll conclude, I think I'm probably over 5 minutes, is that we need to put the resources into the monitoring and with the idea that they're going to be, things will happen we cannot predict, and we need to be able to respond both financially and from a geologic, ecologic point of view. And I would suggest that unless that's done, this project is almost certain to have substantially negative impacts on the biota in this larger system, on this particular site, but also in the larger system that extends down to the Botany beach at Botany Plantation. And I guess maybe I have a question, and nobody can say anything right now, but my question is there any monitoring? Is there any allocation of resources to monitoring? It's not my understanding that there is any.
Thank you, Mr. Beach, for your comments.
Mr. Beach, I noticed in registration, it looks like Virginia Beach also signed up to speak.
Well, I would say she yields her time to me because she's not home yet. But
okay.
We'll
We just wanted to make sure we certainly appreciate any comments being shared in writing as well. And if we need to hear from her if she arrives as we're still having this hearing, make sure you raise your hand or unmute, and we'll make sure we touch base with her.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Tara?
Thank you, Christy. Thank you. That does conclude everyone who pre-registered to make a comment. So we wanted to begin hearing from those who did not pre-register to speak, but have decided to make a comment. I do already see a couple of hands raised, but I wanted to give it just another minute for those of you who have decided that you would like to make a comment to please let us know that by raising your hand using the hand icon on your screen. Or if there's any other just telephone numbers, which I don't believe so, but if there are, simply press *6 on your phone to unmute, and we will make note of those numbers and other names. And I'll give it just a moment. Again, if you have decided you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand using the hand icon or pressing *6 on your mobile device. So at this time, I'd like to call on Riley Egger. Riley, if you would like to unmute yourself and state your name, please.
Howdy, everyone, and good evening. My name is Riley Egger, and I'm the Land, Water, and Wildlife Project Manager with the Coastal Conservation League. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide comment on the proposed critical area permit application. First and foremost, we believe that renourishment with conditions should be considered as a preferred alternative to the current proposal. The project proposes to scrape or mine nearly 25 acres in 3 separate events over the course of 5 years. Sand scraping of this magnitude is highly unusual along South Carolina's coastline, and this sets very dangerous precedent as more communities are searching for the cheapest alternative to hold their beach in place. In addition, repeatedly disturbing a massive amount of critical habitat to place sand in front of an exposed seawall is not a responsible coastal management strategy. The intended harvest is part of what biologists refer to as the Kiowa Seabrook Island Complex. This complex is a pivotal stopover and overwintering site for federally listed migratory shorebirds, such as piping plovers and Rufa red knots. These species feed on the intertidal flats that would be mined in this project proposal. The red knot performs one of the longest known migrations among birds and has experienced a population decline of over 85% in recent decades. SCDNR and USC researchers concluded that in order to preserve the area's ability to sustain shorebird populations, increased recognition and protection of the site is a priority. Due to the proposed critical habitat, Section 7 consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service should be done. Repeatedly harvesting the intertidal flats where shorebirds rely on to forage is contrary to protection efforts. This scraping will not be an isolated incident and will likely need to be repeated unless a longer-term management strategy is in place. Renourishment, subject to conditions, may be a more appropriate alternative. No matter, any project that takes place should include the following conditions. That work is limited from November 1st to January 31st with no more than one sand transfer event per year. A robust monitoring program for the life of the permit should be required to measure beach profiles along the project area, at the harvest and placement sites, as well as along the adjacent and downdrift beach areas, including DeVoe Bank. In addition, a performance bond or letter of credit should be provided in the event any area of the beach is adversely affected and requires mitigation or restoration. Lastly, given the importance of this area for federally listed migratory shorebirds, a financial commitment to shorebird monitoring should be made through the life of the permit. Given the potential impacts of this project and the precedent it sets, it is crucial that it only be approved if there are thoughtful conditions attached that represent responsible stewardship of this ecologically important area. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comment.
Thank you, Riley. And next we have Leslie Leonard. Leslie, if you would please unmute yourself and state your name, please.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Thank you. Yes, this is Leslie Lenhart with the South Carolina Environmental Law Project. And we, along with the League, submitted written comments previously, but we really appreciate the opportunity for this public forum. I have a couple of just brief comments. I think first, this activity proposed from a regulatory perspective presents some problems. The public notice for the application describes this activity, alteration of the critical area, as a sand scraping. But under those regulations, those activities should really only be done on an emergency basis and only between the extended property lines of the sand to be transported. And that really contemplates that this should be a very small scale activity because of the impacts that this kind of sand manipulation has to the public beach. So allowing this large scale project to be approved under the sand scraping regulations, we believe would set a bad precedent. Also, the dredging regulations also have some provisions in there that are concerning. The regulations provide that dredging cannot be approved where there are feasible alternatives. And I did hear Patrick discussing some of the alternatives that they considered, but I am not aware whether or not there was a written alternatives analysis submitted to the agency. And if there was not one, we would certainly request that OCRM require one and that the agency consider all those alternatives very closely. However, in the event that OCRM makes the decision that a permit is warranted, at a minimum, the permit should include the conditions identified by Riley with the Coastal Conservation League. And in particular, we stress the need for a bonding requirement. This kind of artificial modification of the beach dune system is always going to have impacts, and projects like this, including renourishment projects, always have downstream impacts. And we're seeing this more and more across up and down the coast with resulting litigation and many kind of problems and fallout from the lack of this kind of financial assurance. So we would really stress that imposing a condition on the permit to provide for a bond or some sort of other financial assurance is very important. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Leslie. I am not seeing Any additional hands being raised? Christy, I want to double check with you though. Do you see anybody that I might not be seeing?
No, Tara, I don't see any at this time. And again, we can invite anyone who would like to make a comment tonight. Please raise your hand, and we would love to hear from you.
Since there are no other attendees indicating they would like to speak, the comment portion of this evening's public hearing is concluded. On behalf of DHEC, I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening and providing your comments. All comments received by December 20th, 2022 will be considered in DHEC OCRM's decision-making process. Once a final decision is made, DHEC OCRM will provide notification to all who requested to be notified of this decision. You have the right to request a final review of any permit decision made by DHEC. The final review request must be submitted in writing to DHEC's clerk of the board along with a filing fee within 15 days after notice that DHEC's permit decision has been mailed. Finally, if you have questions or if you are interested in discussing specific aspects of this critical area permit application, we encourage you to reach out to Matt Slagle. On behalf of the DHEC OCRM team, thank you for your attendance and comments this evening. The time is now 6:50 p.m. and this hearing is officially adjourned. You may disconnect at this time. Thank you very much and have a good evening.